Hello, all you scaredy cats and kittens, and welcome to the Two Scaredy Cats Podcast, where we talk about all things paranormal. We're your hostess with the mostess. I'm Stacie.
I'm Kara.
So, Kara, did you do anything this weekend or anything like that, or anything been going on recently?
I went to Hocking Hills this weekend.
Oh, yeah?
For like a cabin trip.
That's neat. Did you guys get to explore any of the trails there or anything while you were there?
Friday we went on a trail.
Which one did you guys do?
Rock House. That's the one we went on.
Oh, okay. Oh, you didn't do like the old man's one or whatever?
We were trying
that
to do
one's
like a
kind of
quick
cool.
one before our
Old Man's Cave.
Because we went down before everyone was going there. Because I think the cabin check-in was like 4. It's pretty cool. The cabin had like a basketball court. Okay. It was like a weird, like a full basketball court.
I saw that like in a garage or something.
And they also
weird.
had like a tennis court set up, and we were playing volleyball too. It was really weird. And they had their own private lake that you could fish at. And then they had there was like a little, like a dock that went out to the middle of it. And in the middle was like a little thing you could sit on. And they had lights set up and like tables out there you could sit out on the thing. It was kind of creepy at night because we would like hear these weird noises because we were out in the middle of the woods.
Cool. You should have done some ghost busting while you were out there.
I don't know what we're going to do. Walk around the woods. That sounds pretty scary.
Why not?
It was really weird because at night, because it was so cold, like there would just be mist pouring out from
I saw that one of your pictures had like mist in it and stuff.
Looking,
yeah, that'd have been cool to do a photo shoot with that some of your red lights or whatever.
We were sitting right by the water where the fire pit was.
Jason.
So yeah, we were literally joking that Jason was gonna walk out of the freaking water because it looked like the freaking lake.
Jason Voorhees.
Like just like everything. There's like a little dock and everything. It was like, oh my god, he's just gonna come out and we're in a cabin out here in the middle of the woods.
You all are dead. He's got his hockey mask on and his knife.
Something like that. I don't know. It was spooky. We kept hearing these weird ass noises because there was just me. The first night by the fire, it was just me, our friend Harley, and Stevie, and it was just us 3. Then Harley went in because they were tired, and then it was just me and Stevie, and there was like times where we were just like both quiet, and you could just hear like weird shit, like because there was like a pump in the water to keep it moving, so it wasn't stagnant. We just hear like weird splashing noises, and we would hear like weird like yells from the woods. It was kind of spooky.
What?
Yeah,
yells? That's
noises.
creepy.
Like we heard an owl at one point, which was normal, but like I don't know, we heard some
scary. Like Bigfoot's been sighted around there, right? Or some type of Sasquatch thing.
There's scary stuff in Hocking Hills.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else going on? Oh, did you see that story about that girl that's been missing for the past, I think it's been like almost 2 weeks now. They finally found her remains, but her like boyfriend's like a person of interest, although we all know he did it because, come on, everybody watches Dateline and we all know that he's guilty, especially when his parents wouldn't like pony him up when
he disappears.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't find him anywhere. It's crazy story. I can't wait till that comes out on Dateline or one of those shows because I bet there's some
documentary about it.
Oh, I'm
Especially
sure.
with all the influence from TikTok, because TikTok like it's been uncovering a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, people have been helping though. Fight like
interesting.
But and then they have Dog the Bounty Hunter on it now. It's like crazy how much. Yeah,
they found her remains and everything.
Yeah, I know, that's sad. I mean.
And people think that he also killed those people that called the domestic report on them, because those people died.
Oh, did they really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. The people that called the domestic violence report on them, remember, because like there was all talk about that, they end up dead, which is suspicious.
Yeah, very suspicious. Wow, I didn't realize that. Well, so there was some article going around today about how he's like a monster in disguise and that, his true colors are shining through and all that. So I don't know. I didn't get to read it all. I just saw the headline of it. So who knows what's going on. I hope they find him though.
Yeah.
And his parents should be like in a lot of trouble for harboring him, for one, and not, giving him up when they had the opportunity to before he ran off to go hide in Florida, wherever he was hiding at.
I mean, he's still hiding.
That's
they still
messed
haven't
up.
found him.
I know. They still haven't found him. They need to find him before he takes his own life so they can find out what all went down.
I know.
Yes, it is.
Very sad.
Okay.
Hopefully this will bring more like more people look into other cases, because there's a lot of other cases that don't get as much attention from the news.
That's what they were saying. And the abuse. I mean, there was, several people had said when they stopped them, like the cops and that had mentioned that they felt like she was being abused by him or whatever. So,
oh yeah,
hopefully it'll help bring abuse to, the forefront, and people will be able to talk about it more openly now. Mm-hmm. So, do you want to, how about you go ahead and start this time for us? So what do you have for us today?
We're going to talk about Skinwalker Ranch, which is, there's a lot here because it's probably the most studied, like researched paranormal hotspot, like ever. Mm-hmm. Ever. It's pretty crazy. All of the like research teams and like how much money is being funded and put in here, and like it's just crazy. So the Skinwalker Ranch is also known as the Sherman Ranch. It's located in Unitah County, Utah. So for the owners, there were 1934 to 1994, Kenneth and Edith Myers owned it. And then in 1994 to 1996, Terry and Gwen Sherman were the owners. But there were 7 years, like, between Kenneth and Terry, where it was just kind of, like, no one, they owned the property, but they weren't currently living on the property. They would show up every few months to make sure the fence was still there, like, fence plots and everything. But they weren't actively on the ranch. But in 1996 is when it's back to being... Or 1994 is when the Terry and Gwen Sherman got the ranch. And then in 1996 to 2016, Robert Bigelow bought the ranch. And then from 2016 to present, it is currently owned by Brandon Fugel, and along with Adamation Holdings, the current owners. So when Bigelow sold the Skinwalker Ranch, he sold it for $4.5 million. And after, like, he purchased it, all roads leading to the ranch were blocked off, basically. They were very tight security after that.
Oh, wow.
Terry and Gwen Sherman, when they bought it, they bought it for $200,000. So that's it's crazy how much more it was paid for. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Holy moly.
Or that's how much, I think that's how much...
Right. Wow.
Robert Bigelow bought it from the Terry and Gwen. It's confusing. There's so many people who like passed hands for the ranch. So what is a skinwalker, you might be asking?
Yeah, what is a skinwalker?
Term. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal, or just shapeshift in general. Mm-hmm. This place is basically a hotbed of paranormal activity, from shape-shifting, UFOs, cattle mutilations, Bigfoot. There's paranormal activity. Shadow figures are spotted on the ranch. There's just everything. It's really crazy how much stuff is just going on. Skinwalker Ranch is the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot in history, and it's a joint endeavor was initiated between private industry and the Department of Defense is actually involved in the research. Which is kind of wild. Like, the government is involved. That's how you know. Yeah. It's kind of like the Area 51 of, like, paranormal activity. Exactly. It's crazy how big this whole thing is. George Knapp was the original person that investigated and wrote the book, Hunt for Skinwalker. The name of the documentary where I'm getting most of my stuff from was called also Hunt for the Skinwalker. The Gorman family followed by experience where they were followed by the experiences even after they left the ranch.
Oh, wow.
They don't live on the ranch obviously anymore. Lots of stories of UFOs all over the Utah Basin, not just on the ranch property itself. It's everyone around that area, that county, has been experiencing stuff. The neighbors have also lost cattle because there were cattle mutilations. A poll into the area asked several people if they believed the basin was a hot spot, and 4 out of 5 people said they did believe that, and then like the other 1/5 said they were just kind of on the fence. There was no one that straight up said they don't believe, which is wild.
That is kind of wild, yeah.
It was, yeah. An officer from the area began in 1971 when he took office, and there were several reports of UFOs. The officer said he saw for himself a few times UFOs. His wife also had multiple sightings, and one coincided with a mutilated cow on his property, and one in 1995 directly over Skinwalker Ranch.
Oof.
During the 60s and 70s, UFOs became so common that the locals were just used to seeing them. A book came out about all of the sightings from that time called the Utah UFO Display.
Huh.
So the earliest reports in that area was actually in 1776 by a Spanish missionary. So one of the things about the ranch is the activity will pick up when a new person goes onto the ranch.
Oh, weird.
Is what they kind of said.
Huh.
And then if you make a lot of noise is another thing that kind of makes the stuff ramp up. Or if you dig anywhere on the property.
Yeah, I saw that in
that was in that other one too. Yeah. But apparently the other owners also
experienced that too. Huh.
So it was so like wild that like the previous owners who had owned it for like the longest time, they wanted them to tell them if they were digging on the property. Like, just like give them a heads up, because weird stuff always happens. Even like people who weren't currently living on the property would have experiences.
Huh.
The National Institute for Discovery Science was founded in the 90s by Robert Bigelow. That is like the primary thing that's been studying the ranch from the 1996 to 2016. One of the first strange encounters the Gormans had after purchasing the property was a run-in with what they described as a wolf-like creature. It was 3 times bigger than normal, and the wolf like approached them up to their family, and they originally kind of thought it was like a pet at first. Like it seemed friendly, like it just came up, and then the dad pet it on the head.
Oh jeez, like
three times.
Okay, who pets?
Like, it came up to his chest.
Why would you pet a wild wolf?
He said it seemed nice. Like the they thought it was like a pet or something. Like the way it was
crazy.
Acting.
I wouldn't touch a wolf.
Okay, well, it gets pretty wild. There they had just unloaded their cattle. Like, they just moved in and they just unloaded their cattle. And the wolf, just randomly, they're watching the wolf and just like walking around them, and they're like, oh, this is kind of crazy. He just grabs. So there's a calf that was sticking its head through the bars of the corral,
right.
And the wolf just like bolts over and grabs its neck and starts attacking.
Oh my
it,
god!
Like viciously in front of them. It's quiet. So then they're like, what the heck? So then the guy goes over and tries to kick the dog.
The wolf.
Not wog. It's a freaking wolf.
Right.
He's just kicking the wolf in the chest. Wolf's not reacting, so he wants his son to go grab him like a gun to shoot it. So he gets a gun and he just shoots it like 7 feet away. The dog doesn't react at all. It just keeps biting.
Oh wow!
You would think it would react,
right? And
then he gets closer, shoots it again, nothing.
Huh.
He shoots it again, nothing. And then the 4th time he shoots it, eventually the dog just like drops the neck and he like backs away. He seems pretty unfazed. He's not bleeding at all, which is weird. He just really shot it like point blank, pretty much.
Missing some chunks or something.
There should be some sort of something, but the wolf is just chilling there. He's like, okay, whatever, I guess I'll leave. The wolf like turns around, just kind of like nonchalantly walks away. He goes back into like the little. He's running off, and they're like, So they go and grab a bigger gun. Like, this gun is like for like moose. Like, it's a big freaking gun. Like, it's like one shot and the moose is dead.
Yeah.
So they shoot at the dog. Doesn't do anything. It should be dead. Like, obliterated. Okay. Dead. The wolf is he just like looks at him and just keeps running down the trail. They chase after the wolf. And they
at this point, when it's running away from me, why are you chasing it? Let the thing go at that point.
Clearly, the family's pretty shaken.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if I saw like a freaking just wolf come up out of nowhere and he was super chill and then starts attacking things, I'd be like, what the heck is going on?
I know, but I wouldn't be dumb and go chasing after it. Obviously, if bullets aren't killing it, it's going to come after you at some point and try to eat you. Just saying. I
mean, I agree. But so this guy is like fluent in tracking animals. So he's able. Okay. So like the wolf's pretty fast. He's like zipping away because he's like, peace. They're chasing after him. They're chasing after the wolf. And they're going down to like a creek bed. It's about like 100 feet or so away from where they were. And it's like mud. So it's pretty easy to follow the tracks. And then there's a point where the tracks just disappear. Stop. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So the wolf is just gone. Like, almost like it just disappeared out of, like, thin air. It was really weird.
Huh.
The wife actually later had another experience with seeing the kind of wolf. It was at the entrance of the property, and the wolf was in the company of 2 black dogs. They were just chilling.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. It's creepy.
Huh. Yeah.
The family who owned the ranch before the Gormans like I said before, they wanted to be notified whenever there was digging, and then the family, when there was digging, they would feel like the ground would shake, and it sounded like there was metal coming from below. There were like loud noises of like machinery underground. It was really scary.
Okay, weird.
This is wild. Parts of the pasture would light up the sky at night, and then vehicles would stall randomly, as would batteries would just like die, like on the property. They would find random scoop marks that would appear at places on the ranch. And at night, they would hear what sounded like heavy footsteps outside of their house. And when they would look outside, they would see these black, faceless figures peering in at them. And it would sound like they would come inside the house. That's scary, right? I'm like, no, out of that, I'm done.
I would be selling that property to somebody else.
I'm surprised they I think they only like stayed there like for 10 months or something. It wasn't a long time. They got scared off pretty quick.
Well, I would be too.
Locked doors would open and slam shut.
Oof.
3 young men spent 4 hours moving a pile of heavy corral poles, and later that day, the pile was moved back to where it originally was.
Oh, wow.
That's weird, right?
Yeah, I'd be kind of torqued off, though, personally.
I mean, I feel like I'd be more upset. Like, it seems like it's, like,
playing with them or taunting them, yeah.
Like a trickster, almost. Tools they were literally using would disappear as they were being used, and they would be found, like, 100 yards away.
Oh, that's weird.
Like, they would be using a chainsaw, and then they would find, like, the chainsaw 100 yards away. That would be just make me like so angry. Like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
During a lunch break, like, there was a digger disappeared, and the next day it was found up in a tree. Like,
what? Like
I think it would dig pole, like the pole.
Oh, like a pole digger.
Yes, a pole digger.
Yeah, okay.
It would be found up in a tree. That's crazy.
Oh, that's weird.
Because
I thought you meant like
mad. No, that'd be crazy if that was up in a tree.
Like a car, like type thing. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's in the tree. Okay, I got
but
you
that's
now.
Still
that would
crazy
be really
that's
weird.
In a tree.
That is insane. Because that thing's kind of heavy. I can't imagine trying to carry that and climb up the tree.
So
that would be hard.
it showed up like the next few days, but he had already bought a new one. So as soon as he bought a new one, he found the old one up in a tree, and he's like, "What the
Jeez."
So, like, it's also costing them so much money.
Right.
Because then there's the cattle mutilation that's going on, too.
Right.
And they're, like, cattle, that's what their whole job is. They, like, sell their cattle and stuff.
Okay. So they're cattle herders. You didn't specify that.
I said,
okay.
Yeah, it's a ranch.
Well, you said it was a ranch, but
ranch.
You didn't tell me that it was, like, a working ranch that they... Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's a literal ranch. There's, like, farm stuff.
Right.
So... NIDS would rely on dogs when they were studying the ranch to alert them when strange phenomenon was occurring.
That makes sense, because animals are more attuned to that than people are.
Oh, yeah. And they would build these little observation towers all over the property, and with fences.
What? Just to see what's going on?
Yes, they would build these things, and then they would build the little
crazy.
Fences around where they would put, like, the dogs, and they sometimes put the cattle in there. But something would just open the thing and let all the dogs out randomly. And then they got, like, these really strong padlocks, and then those would just go missing, and then they would be let free again. So it was just frustrating to work, even, like, try and do anything. It's like whatever did not want them there, but whatever sort of presence.
Or they didn't want them messing with the cattle. I guess didn't want them to be cattle farmers or whatever was going on.
They also installed surveillance cameras all over the property and other sort of sensors. They tried to debunk most of the claims, and they searched for, like, hallucinogenic plants, whatever they could to try and explain. Because they mainly went in there to try and, like, debunk it. They weren't there to, like, prove it. Right, Because this is, like, science.
I was just going to say, they were doing this from a scientific point of view, not from a paranormal point of view, right?
Just trying to...
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They were interviewed the family, the neighbors, and other eyewitnesses. And the things... So there were things that would happen, but they would just happen slightly off camera. like whatever knew that they were being watched, so it'd be like, well, I'm
oh, that's weird.
Thing over here.
Huh.
Yeah. Reports. Okay, this is like the craziest stuff. There were reports of orange orbs in the sky that appeared to be a tunnel to a different place.
Oh, weird.
And sometimes they would see things flying out of the orbs.
Oh, okay.
And one night, they were on a patrol up on a mountain, and they saw one of these things open.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw a humanoid creature crawl out of the tunnel.
Wait, crawl out of it?
Yes,
okay.
Like on his hands,
all right.
like on his hands, and he's crawling out of this tunnel.
Okay,
but the
weird.
only one who could see it, because they had like infrared goggles, and only the infrared goggle guy could see it. The other guy who was with them just saw the light of the tunnel, but he could not see like what was actually going on
figure.
inside.
Oh,
but the
gross.
guy could see like the thing coming out of it, and he could see
crazy.
what he looked. It's like an interdimensional sort of tunnel thing, and they could see something like another area like in the tunnel, like something was crawling in from a different dimension.
Cool.
And it was an 8-foot tall black creature with a head. It didn't have a neck and a torso and arms and legs. And it just kind of came out of the tunnel, and then as it came out of the tunnel, the tunnel just disappeared, started shrinking, and then disappeared, and it sort of faded into light. It's like a wormhole. Huh. This thing just crawled out of.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah, some weird thing.
And
hey, no big deal.
And just ran off into the woods to do what knows what. Just pretty terrifying.
Nice. Right.
If I saw that, I'd be like, I'm done. I'm not working here no more. I don't. And it's like they're scientists,
exactly.
So it has to have some credibility. Why would they, like this was in a research report, that they report all this crazy stuff.
Crazy.
So one of the most noteworthy kind of things happened was 4 2,000-pound bulls were in the corral, and the ranchers went to the other side of the property to check on their other livestock. And when they returned, the bulls were not in the corral anymore. There was a trailer that used to store equipment that was locked, that was right next to this. And the rancher was like, oh, well, let's check in there. I don't know where else the heck could be. So he looked inside, and all 4 bulls were crammed into this tiny trailer. And they were just in there, and they seemed like they were in a daze. Like, they weren't reacting. They were just kind of standing there. The rancher, yelled to his wife to be like, hey, I found the freaking bulls. They're in this trailer. And all of a sudden, they just, kind of, snapped out of it. And they started being super aggressive and started trying to push their way out and got wild and crazy. And it kicked a door down. Oof. And it destroyed they completely destroyed the inside of this trailer.
Well, I guess they were probably freaked out because, 1 minute they're hanging out on the ranch.
They're
and
inside
next minute
of this.
They're in this, boxcar. Right, truck. Yeah. Jeez.
But yeah, they kicked the door open and destroyed the inside of the trailer. So they were just kind of like, here we are. So immediately they called the NIDS team to come back and check it out. The only kind of evidence they were able to find was that the fence was extremely magnetic, right up where the trailer was against it. And then after a few hours, it was no longer magnetized. But which is weird, it just, it faded. Weird. So it has to do something with magnetic activity.
Yeah, it sounds like that.
So one day, they were tagging new calves. And they left for 40 minutes to go walk to the other side to go get the other tag another calf. And they brought a dog with them. And all of a sudden the dog started acting really strange, and it ran off. It was marking towards where the house was, where the first calf was. And the dogs ran off, and they never found that dog again, which is concerning. And they went back, and they saw the mom was just pacing back and forth in a circle kind of thing. And they found the calf and was dead, mutilated.
Ew.
It looked like all of its muscle had been removed from the inside of it. And the ear where the tag was, it looked like it was surgically removed. Which is weird. Yeah.
Ugh,
one of the femur bones was forcibly removed from it, and they found it 100 yards away from the original calf.
Ew.
Yeah, there was literally no known predator that could do something like this.
Oh my god.
There was no blood. and there was no entrails at all. There was like no blood anywhere, but it was just like a completely dead calf, which is weird.
Like gutted, like nothing left, right? Like the insides were missing,
like all of its muscles
missing.
were removed. Everything was removed.
Weird.
It looked like basically what they described it as someone did this elsewhere and then just kind of placed it
Popped
back
it back. Oh, okay.
Yeah. They immediately called the NIDS team out to go look at it because they were on vacation, of course. They came back and then they brought like a veterinarian to come out, and the veterinarian kind of confirmed that it looked like it was carved out by someone wielding sharp metallic instruments. Like it didn't look like an animal attack.
Weird.
Yeah. And but that's basically mainly what I had. There's like a lot more that's going on, especially with the new owner.
Right. Right. Oh, the new owner has tons of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's
that's still crazy.
But all that was mainly from the
previous owner,
the owners before the current owners.
Because that's some crazy.
That's basically what
stuff with that.
It was just a lot. Right. What they had.
Yeah, that is a lot of different things too. It's not just one type of experience. Yeah, they've got it all going on there. Apparently, you know. Like they have Bigfoot.
Right. They have Bigfoot sightings, mainly UFOs, but there are other stuff. Like, and it just seems like it's a trickster entity. Yep. The way it like messes with their stuff,
with them. And puts stuff in trees.
It seems sentient too.
Like it knows, right?
Reacts to them, or it knows what they're going to be doing beforehand. Yeah. So definitely an unusual place, and I had to watch that documentary during the day because I was too scared to watch it at night. It just.
Yeah.
All right, what do you have for us?
Okay, so actually mine kind of ties into yours a little bit because you were talking about the witches, about how the Skinwalkers were basically a form of a witch. I'm going to be talking about the Salem Witchcraft Trials. Mm-hmm. And actually I found when I was in high school, we had to read The Crucible by Arthur Miller, which was a really good book, but it was not actually a true telling of the story. I never realized this until now. And I found this really awesome book that kind of explained better in detail what was going on and sort of like all the shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes and how it got to the amount of fervor that happened with it and why they think certain individuals were claiming other individuals were witches and stuff. So to start us off with, the first so-called witch trial or witch to hang was a healer from Boston by the name of Margaret Jones. And the story goes that the mere touch from her would cause violent pains to whoever came in contact with her. They would experience deafness. They would have vomiting. And so she was tried and hanged in 1648 during an epidemic of fits, is what they called it. And that was the very first witch case to happen in Boston or in the northeastern area. So now we go forward a little bit. And so starting in the 1680s, there was a disease going around that people were talking about. And it's called the dread disease, okay? And it's like this thing where people would have these like hallucinations, or they would have these like fits, almost like epilepsy, where they would start swallowing their tongues and stuff like that. And this fear spread all over New England about this dread disease. But the reason why it spread the most was thanks to a father and son duo who were from Boston, and they were both ministers. Their names were Increase and Cotton Mather. And they had written several books about settlers who were possessed by demons and or were plagued by witches. And this kind of sets up everything that was to happen in Salem. You had, these guys writing these books about some of these stories that were going on in these other little towns in New England at the time. And people would read these because these were so sensational, all the stuff that they were talking about happening and all that. And I happen to have one story in particular from their book that a lot of people were really freaked out about, and that kind of started the whole witch thing. So the most profound story was about four children from a pious family in Boston who were suffering from some horrible fits, okay? Their tongues would be sucked down their throat to the point of they were basically choking on their own tongue. Then they would get pulled out, but not by them. Like, it would just, like, roll out all the way to the end of their chin. Their jaws would, like, snap out of joint all on their own. And then it would clamp back to the way it was. They were crying out that they were being cut with knives. And then they would say that they were hit. And while this was going on, their heads would turn almost all the way around, to the point that they ended up having their necks got broken. And this was going on, and they would bark like dogs. So they had all this like weird, crazy stuff going on. They basically said that there was a washerwoman who was an Irish Catholic by the name of Goody Glover. And they said that it was her that was cursing them with these fits and all this stuff, that they could see her spirit coming at them. Everybody thought that she might be a witch, but once the boys accused her of being one, you know how that is. Everybody figured that, felt like she was a witch because the boys were saying it was so it must be so, because children don't lie ever. And she was tried in a court, and she was eventually hung by her neck. So, So now here we are in Salem in the year of 1692, and this is where our story begins and where it all starts. So in 1692, we have a reverend by the name of Paris who moves to the town of Salem, Massachusetts. And when he moves there, he's told that when he comes there, that they will have this house for him. There'll be plenty of wood there for him to keep warm with, and stuff. And, it's like this really nice place, and they'll cover all of his expenses and stuff. So he moves there. Now, remember, this is January, so it's super cold. And we're talking about, northeastern, so cold, a lot of snow and stuff. And there was no firewood when he gets there, which kind of ticks him off a little bit. The church that he was now in charge of, they were Puritans, by the way. And the church that he was in charge of, they didn't have food and stuff available for him like they were supposed to. So, here he comes in the month of January, so he's got to hurry up and scourge around and, find what he needs for his family. Well, it was so cold in their place because they didn't have, any blankets or anything or the firewood to keep it warm enough. And his daughter Betty and his niece Abigail, who lived with them because she was an orphan. Her parents had passed away by the Indians, and they had adopted her, started getting really sick. And this is when he felt that this was like the first sign. Now, remember, he's a reverend man of God. And, he thinks that, at first he doesn't think too much of it. But once it keeps continuing on and it gets worse, he starts to wonder what's really going on. Now, just a little backstory on the Puritans. The Puritans believed that there was two worlds, okay? There was the natural world, like what we see, taste, and all that. And they believed that there was an invisible world. And the invisible world, apparently, was swarming with apparitions and shadowy phantoms of, the like the devil and stuff like that. So they had these two worlds that they believed in. So here he is, and he's like, my, kids are getting sick. I wonder what's up with this. So that was his first sign that the girls were sick. The second sign was that when the Abenaki Indians who lived near where they were attacked, because this is during the French and Indian Wars, okay? We were constantly in wars with the Indians trying to fight for the land, attacked a town called York, which was only maybe a little bit north of Salem, and it really freaked everybody out because up to this time they really hadn't had too much troubles with the Indians, okay? So, and they believed that Indians were the devils and that their shamans were witches. So here you go, you got more of this talk of, they're devils and they're bringing their wicked ways with them. He has a physician who was a good friend of his come and check on the girls because, they're still experiencing these weird illnesses, and they're having these like epileptic fits where they, are like swallowing their tongue and stuff. And he comes and he declares that the girls have been touched by an evil hand or bewitched. So this sets us up for the whole, for everything that happens. By the way, in the year of 1641, 1642, and in 1655, new laws had just come about in Massachusetts and Connecticut that proclaimed that witchcraft was a crime and it was punishable by death. Up until then, they didn't have any of those types of laws.
What do they describe as witchcraft, though? Like, how do they tell what's witchcraft and what's not?
Oh, I'm going to get to that because you're going to hear some of the things that they accuse people of doing. It's kind of silly. It really is.
So I was like, how do you... That's a pretty broad
term. It
is
very broad. And you could be... I mean, back then, you could just look at somebody the wrong way and they can say that you've... Because the whole deal was that most people, you couldn't see what was happening, but these girls, okay, and it was all these little girls that were at the heart of all this and started it all, were claiming that the spirits of these older women were coming and attacking them, and only they could see them. It was really messed up what happened. The Puritans also trusted that God did everything for a reason, and they thought that God himself had tossed the devil, put the devil in chains, and allowed him at certain times to go out and punish bad people. That was their belief. Yeah. So, yeah, it was kind of a little kind of backwards way that they thought about stuff. So basically it all started when Betty Paris, who was 9 years old, and the Reverend's daughter, and Abigail Williams, who was his orphan niece, start saying that Tituba, who was the slave of the Reverend, was casting herself to them and making them have these fits and, coming to them in the form of a dog and all this crazy stuff. There was also an incident where a lady by the name of Sarah Good had stopped at their house a couple weeks prior to all this and knocked on the door, okay? She was a beggar lady. She was not married, but she had small children that she was taking care of at the time. And she would come to different people's house and ask for food, okay? Well, she came to their house, and I guess they gave her some food. And I guess they didn't like her response when they did give her the food. They say that she muttered, and they felt that she was putting a curse on their house. So the girls then said that Sarah Good, who was this homeless beggar lady, was also one of the people that was cursing them and sending her spirit to them and making them sick and do all these crazy things. And then there was also a third person that was named a little bit later on by these two girls, and that started it all. Now, the children were sick, okay, so they're home with their maid Tituba, okay? And Tituba decides that she, likes the children and she's been taking care of them for all these years, decides that she wants to find out what's going on and try to help. So the parents go to a lecture, I guess, because he's a reverend and they have lectures back then. And she decides she's going to use some folk magic, okay? And folk magic to them is basically witchcraft, I guess. And she had heard that, they use it to help heal people. They make salves and stuff like that, to help with ailments, sort of your arm sore or whatever. So she talks to one of the neighbors and she tells her that she should make a black magic witch cake to find out who the witch is that is hurting the girls. So her and her husband, who was also a slave to the family, decided they are going to make this witch cake. So here's the recipe that they use, by the way. This is pretty messed up. So they take some rye flour and they get the girls' urine, okay? They mix it up together and they throw it into their fireplace so it gets blackened in the ashes. And then they're told that they need to feed it to the dog because dogs were considered the familiars for the witch instead of cats like we all hear about now. They considered dogs were their familiars. So it was said that if you feed them, the dog, this witch cake, that the dog would break the curse, and then the girls could tell you who actually cursed them.
Oh, that's weird.
So they feed the family dog this witch cake. And the Reverend and his wife come home and found out what they did. Now, to the Puritans, this was like the worst thing you could ever do because you're basically dabbling in witchcraft, which, they're not happy about. So they basically, tell Tituba she's in all kinds of trouble. And then all of a sudden, the girls start throwing these fits. All right, and their backs and their necks and their arms would contort into all these weird types of shapes. And so, as you can imagine, their families are like freaking out by now. And so the girls said that they called out Tabitha's name and said that she was the one that was doing it. And they also named Sarah Good, who was the lady that had stopped by, was asking for food. And a third lady by the name of Sarah Osborne, who nobody in town really liked because they said her second husband that she married was actually her servant at one time. And back then, you know how they are. They believed everybody was pious and pure, and they didn't like the fact that she had married her servant. That was frowned upon. She had also not been to church in over a year, so, you know, the reverend wasn't very happy about that at all.
Yeah.
So they basically said that she was part of one of the three witches that had been doing this. So on February 29th of 1692, so this is like a month later, the first complaints were filed, and those three ladies were thrown in jail for being witches.
Yeah.
The first four girls to accuse people of being witches were all friends or relatives of one another. So the first four girls, one of them's name was Anne Putman, and her family was actually the people that brought the Reverend Paris and his family to the town of Salem. So they have ties together. Elizabeth Hubbard was also one of the girls that was making claims against people for being witches. And she was actually the Dr. Gibbs that I told you about, or Dr. Giggs I told you about, who had said the girls were, you know, that they had the witches were at mark on them or whatever. And so she was his niece. And she was also friends with Betty and Abigail, who started the whole thing. So you can see where all these people are friends with one another and stuff, and how, you know, one person says something to the other one, and then they're all like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. So once the three witches went to jail, the fits did not stop because everybody thought, oh, you know, the witches are in jail. The girls should all this silliness should stop and the girls should be back to the way they were.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't happen. The whole town then went into a frenzy and more people were starting to be accused of being witches.
Yeah.
Anne Putman, the girl, would single out three more witches. Dorothy Good, which was Sarah Good's daughter. She was only 4 years old at the time, and she got thrown into the Salem jail with her mom. But can you imagine being 4 years old and being cute? The girl doesn't even know what a witch is. I mean, seriously. That was some messed up stuff. And then there was a lady by the name of Martha Corey, who was actually considered to be a very pious lady, but she was from not the same religion they were. She was from a different religion, and she lived like a couple towns over. And then the good wife nurse, she was also accused. So on April 19th, John Proctor's servant, Mary Warren, said that she had been lying when she accused people of being witches. She also claimed that the other three girls who were telling them that people were witches were also lying and faking their fits that they were having. So guess what happened? Nobody believed her, and they all accused her of also being a witch. Go figure. So in all, 74 people had said that they were attacked by witches. And out of that, at least 59 of them were female. The victims were ages from the age of 9 all the way to 81, plus one. This was written in the book that one person who was considered to be ancient was also in there with them. Ancient? Yeah, they called them ancient. So I don't know what that means in their world, but they were ancient. Right. I know, it's weird. 3 dogs were also executed for being the familiar for the witches, which is sad. Aww. So on May 14th, which we're probably by now we're about 5 months in, one of the town magistrates refused to send anyone else to prison when on that day more than 50 people were arrested and had been thrown into jail. So at this time, the jails were busting at the seams.
Yeah, I was like, was there anyone not in jail?
Right? I know. It's like everybody was getting thrown in for the silliest of things. So your neighbor could be pissed off at you for maybe having a grudge for taking some of their land. So they could say, oh, he's a witch. I saw him consorting with the devil, and they were having church and all this at nighttime. And so it's just messed up. The town basically stank to high heaven where the jails were. People were being tortured while in these jails too. So if someone on the outside did not bring you food or a blanket, you basically were out of luck. Because how jails were run back then was you had to pay for your stay in jail the whole time you were in there. And some of these,
pay?
Yes, you had to pay for however much they decided it was for each day that you were in there. And you also had to pay for your food. So if you were a poor person and you couldn't afford to pay for your food, all you got was bread and water. And that's it. And you didn't have a blanket and you had to sleep on the hard, cold floor.
The heck?
Remember back then people didn't get showers a lot because we're talking about the 1600s here, you know?
Yeah.
There was a lot of lice that was going around and a lot of diseases like smallpox was running rampant because they brought it over from England and stuff. So you had a lot of stuff going on in these jails. You know, you had all these people like basically dying in jail because they were waiting so long too. The funniest thing is this all started in January. Okay, here we are in May. Nobody's still gone to trial yet. They're all just still sitting in jail waiting to go to trial to find out whether or not they really are witches or not. So on May 14th, the royal governor, who had at the time been over in England, came back to Boston and returned to find all these people rotting in jail. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We can't have all these people rotting in jail. We need to do something about this. You got to try them. You can't just let them sit there and not do anything about it. So on June 2nd of 1692, the first trial began. On June 10th, Bishop was the first person to be hanged. On July 19th, 5 more people were hung. On August 19th, 5 more people were hung. And yeah. And then on September 19th, this was kind of like the catalyst, like the end of it, like where people decided this is ridiculous, we're being crazy. Mm-hmm. There was a gentleman by the name of Giles Corey, and if you remember, I talked about his wife who had been accused of being a witch. Well, when she got accused of being a witch, he basically told everybody, oh yeah, she's a witch, I agree. She did all these weird things, and my cat was doing all this weird stuff. Like, lied and said that she was a witch too. Well, they came after him, and they said that he had been accused of being a witch. So he said that he was not guilty. And back then, it was thought that if you were not guilty, and you had to stand trial, and you didn't say anything, that you would not be killed. You would get to live, at least. Well, so he didn't say a word, but it didn't help him out because they still ended up saying that he was guilty. But the problem is because he wouldn't say anything, instead of getting hung like everybody else did, he actually got pressed to death. And what that involved, it's very gruesome, is what happens with that is basically they strip you down to nothing. They lay you on the ground and they put a heavy board on you. And then they take these bricks and they slowly start piling the bricks on top of the heavy board on your chest.
What the heck?
And they keep doing this until either you confess that you're a witch or what you did. So he would not say that he had, that he had did it. So he laid there. It took him 2 days to die. And they said it was like the worst thing anybody had seen. He was buried in an unmarked grave because they felt that it was suicide, basically what happened to him. So he was not buried like next to his wife or with any of the rest of his family. Yeah. After that happened, actually one of the gentlemen that was in charge of the trials, he quit. He left. He decided he didn't want to be in charge of it anymore or be part of this because he felt that what was going on was wrong. So then on September 22nd, 2 days after Giles had died, 8 more people were hung. And that was the last time anybody died from being a witch in Salem at the time. So on October 19th, a group of women came forward and reversed their confessions and revealed that not a single person that they had accused was actually involved in witchcraft, and they had not harmed them. So it took over 300 years. But on May 9th, 1992, the state of Massachusetts and the city of Salem finally dedicated a memorial to honor all the slain witches during the Salem Witchcraft Trials. And that memorial is called the Salem Village Witchcraft Victims Memorial of Danvers, because actually the way Salem was set up, Danvers was actually the name of the village that was right next to where all this happened.
Oh.
So yeah, that's kind of like the whole backstory of Salem Witchcraft Trials, which is a lot different than what I remembered when I was reading The Crucible back in school.
Yeah, I remember The Crucible.
Yeah, I like that book. I mean, it was not because people died in it, of course, but just because of how sad it was that, you know, people could just say whatever they wanted to say about somebody. And like I said in the when I was reading this book about it, they mentioned that the Putmans, who their daughter was one of the ones that was accusing everybody of being witches, they actually had a bunch of land disputes with several people that were named as witches. So when they died, all those land disputes stopped and they ended up getting their land.
That is really...
So, yeah, it was pretty messed up. Like, there was also one of the constable, and he was in charge of keeping track of what people owned and all that stuff. And before he finally went away, he actually ended up going through and stealing all the property that these people that were, you know, put into jail for being witches would go and steal all their stuff. Like, he had people's wedding rings, and he would just go through their house. He was supposed to send it to England to go back to the king at the time that was in charge of England, but he didn't. He kept it all for himself. So, and they never were able to find it, and did supposedly give restitution to some of these people for, you know, the stuff that happened to their ancestors and that, but it was never like the same amount that they would have lost during that time. But yeah, it's just scary to think that, you know, somebody could just decide one day that, you know, you looked at them wrong and you're a witch, and, you know, you're going to burn at the stake. Yep. So be mindful of that when people are telling stories about other people. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, because they could be lying, making stuff up.
Or they could be truthing. You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
Could be either or.
Yep, could be. But anyway, that's all I have for today.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed our podcast today, please follow us on Instagram at Two Scaredy Cats Podcast. And please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, as it really helps the show get discovered. Tune in next week for a new episode. To all our scaredy cats and kittens out there, remember, curiosity didn't kill these two scaredy cats.